Before we begin this video, I want to dedicate this specific video to Evans Brassfield, Motorcycle.com's editor-in-chief, who tragically lost his life in a road accident 1 week ago from the day I'm filming this video. Evans, wherever you are, I hope you're smiling down on us from upstairs, and we miss you. Again, we want to thank the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute for sponsoring this video. MMI is a school for motorcycle enthusiasts who want to train for a career in the industry. Click the link above for more information. You Ducati folks are a funny breed because whenever you speak aloud to the community and say you want a bike, it seems like Ducati listens, and no more has that been true than what you're seeing in front of you right now. This is the Ducati Multistrada V4 RS. Think of the Panigale V4, but in Multistrada trim. Just complete performance-oriented sport bike wrapped in Multistrada clothing. This is, as Ducati says, the pinnacle of sporting performance for the Multistrada line. You can go two-up riding, have a nice comfortable weekend trip, ditch your passenger, ditch the saddlebags, swap tires, and go rip at your racetrack and have a great time too. So what defines the Multistrada V4 RS? Well, first you can just look at the bike. The special white livery with Ducati MotoGP red accents right here make this bike stand out from all the rest of the Multistrada lineup. You can look at the back of the bike, and that tail section is a more sporty, angular design compared to the rest of the Multistrada line. Let's focus up front here first. The most obvious things, you have the carbon fiber fender, the beak. This carbon fiber windscreen is an accessory item. The standard one is a dark smoke shield. You have these wind deflectors on the side as well. The red Brembo Stylema calipers down here, 330mm discs, and the Marchesini forged wheels. As we move further down the bike, in this section right here, what look like winglets, which, you know, Ducati has kind of pioneered the winglet idea in the sporting motorcycle world. However, these winglets here are not designed for aerodynamic purposes. There's a flap within them that you can open or close to either direct wind flow to cool the passenger's legs or your legs, or you can close the flap so no air comes through depending on the weather that day. So if you want to warm yourself up a little bit, you close the flap and less airflow comes through. If it's a warmer day, you open the flap and more airflow comes through. Then we have the Öhlins electronic suspension up front. It's the event-based suspension system, not the skyhook system as seen on the other Multistrada models, the GT specifically. Event-based means depending on what sort of feedback you want from suspension, say in a track environment, you want more brake support or less brake support, or more acceleration support or less. That's the kind of feedback this system gives you. We scooch back a little bit, you see the carbon fiber handguards. Those are standard equipment on the RS as well. The Multistrada V4 RS uses the same V4 engine as the Panigale, more or less. The beauty of this system here, this has the desmodromic valves, whereas the other Multistrada use the valve springs with the GT versions. Then you have Ducati dry clutch, because really, if your Ducati doesn't have desmo valves and a dry clutch, do you really have a Ducati? I don't know. So you've spoken, Ducati's answered. Dry clutch, desmo valves, this is the heart of what Ducati defines as their sporting heritage with this RS model. As we move back here, you'll see a titanium subframe. Obviously, titanium saves weight, about 2.5 kilos over the standard subframe on the other Multistrada models. This also helps support everything that is in this area, the bags, the passenger, you of course. So it's just as strong, but it's also light. Then talking about the seat, you have a really nicely bolstered, really comfortable, really plush. I know the first thing I thought of when I sat on this was, dang, this is really soft and supportive and comfortable. But also too, depending on your body type and your body size, You can change the position of the seat that's currently in the high position now. You can see a gap right here. All you gotta do is take the seat off, move it into a different position, fill in this gap, and it lowers the seat 20 mil. And if that's still too tall for you, there's an accessory seat as well that lowers that even further. So big or small, you'll find a comfortable position here on the RS. With the handlebars, there's no more rubber mounts for the handlebars. It's now a rigid mount handlebar to the triple clamp, so you have direct feedback to what the front end of the bike is doing. That sort of direct feedback just kind of ties into how much sporting character the Multi V4 RS has. Of course, you have saddlebags integrated into the design of the bike. The mounts for them are right here. And with the bags off, it still ties into the design of the bike. It doesn't look weird or ungainly without the saddlebags, but obviously with them, you have more storage capacity and you can do your options for carrying things obviously go a whole lot further. Down here, you can see the single-sided swing arm, so you have the rear wheel exposed there. Makes it for easier rear wheel changes as well. And then, like I said before, the sculpted rear tail section with integrated grab handles, so your passenger has something to grab onto. This bike, like the other Multistradas, has the adaptive cruise control with the radar detector right here, which also has the blind spot detection as well. The big complaint about the V4 engine was heat. And we talked already about the flap in the winglets here to direct airflow either to or away from the rider, but also a carbon fiber heat shield here to deflect some of that heat away, especially from the passenger, but also a little bit of the rider itself. And then buried in here as well, it's a little bit harder to see from that angle, but there's also another heat shield just above the swing arm as well. Again, deflecting heat away from the rider and the passenger. The Akrapovic exhaust comes standard on this bike. There's also an accessory Akrapovic exhaust that gives you 12 more horsepower and shaves about 5 kilos of weight. So the standard horsepower number for this bike is 180 with the racing exhaust that bumps it up to 12, so 192. If you look at the dyno chart of this multi versus the other multis, there's more peak power up top and there's a higher rev limit as well, but that comes at the expense of torque. So track focused or really sport oriented type of riders who are gonna gravitate towards this bike probably won't miss that little bit of torque because you'll probably be doing this a whole lot where you can feel that extra power kicking in as well. And then on the electronic side of things, the Multi V4 RS has race mode, whereas the others have an enduro mode. Race mode, obviously, more track oriented. It gives you full power just like the other modes do, but it reduces traction control, wheelie control, engine braking, all of those things. Gives you what you would expect from a race mode, just outright performance from the motorcycle. Like other Ducatis, you can customize whatever settings you want for whatever ride mode you're in, just to personalize it for your tastes. So the Multi V4 RS is not a limited edition motorcycle, but each of them will be numbered. And as usual, there is a number plate on the triple clamp that will tell you what number you have. Adding on to the cool list of features on this bike, the pocket compartment right here on the fuel tank opens up and there's a cell phone compartment in here with a built-in fan to keep your phone cool. It's a little detail. I think it's a pretty neat and pretty interesting and a pretty smart idea too. So among the many differences for this V4 RS compared to the others, the rear brake now has more power from a smaller master cylinder too, so there's a more forceful feeding of fluid to the rear brake whenever you press the rear brake lever. The final gear ratio is different as well. There's now one less tooth in the front and one more tooth in the rear, so you have a little bit greater acceleration when you come off a corner. So a difference with the Multi V4 RS versus say the Pikes Peak is a smaller lead acid battery, which is lighter than the Pikes Peak version. Overall, the RS is about 3 kilos lighter. Some of that weight has to do with the battery, for example, but it's offset by the dry clutch, which actually weighs more than the wet clutch on the other multi-models, including the Pikes Peak. This is a bike I've wanted to ride even before today when I didn't know this bike existed. I've long had an idea of taking a Multistrada to a track day and seeing just how fast and how capable this chassis and this platform can be. So to answer that question, Ducati was kind enough to invite me out to the Modena circuit, which is where I am right now, to try it out. Now, this circuit is very tight, very twisty. I would say maybe not the best suited track for something of this size. With this much power and this much weight, this would make a great supermoto track, just to give you an idea of how tight and twisty we're talking about here. I think I maybe touched third gear once or twice, and that was on the front straight. Everywhere else we're talking about second gear corners. So while it's not the most ideal circuit to try a big motorcycle like this, it did bring to light a few things. One, this V4 engine is awesome no matter what it's put into. It's so rideable. You would think something with 180 plus horsepower. The bikes we were on, or the bike I was on today, had the accessory Akrapovic racing exhaust, so 192 horsepower, which in my mind has no purpose being on a tight and twisty racetrack, but for some reason it works. Like, everything just works. It's so easy to ride, even in the race mode setting. Now, the conditions today are overcast. It's been spritzing with rain off and on. I was on slick tires. So all of that would tell me it's a recipe for disaster, right? Especially with this much power underneath my right wrist. I am happy to report that my leathers are perfectly fine. I didn't crash a bike. Everything turned out okay. And I give a lot of that credit to how easy the Multistrada V4 RS is to ride. And that credit goes to the Ducati team, who have worked tirelessly, well, since the V4 platform was introduced, but especially since 2020, to refine not just the electronics, but how the rider is engaged with their right wrist, to doing this, to what is delivered to the back tire. It's something we take for granted, that we just assume when you twist the throttle, you get the power in the back tire and it's all manageable by your right wrist. If you're Casey Stoner, sure, you can do that kind of thing. I don't think many of us are. And that extra confidence you get from having such a refined mapping from the throttle to the back tire, no matter in which mode you're in, is just something that's amazing to behold. A really tight racetrack, a really powerful bike, but it was easy. I think the bigger surprise for me and the bigger difference that I was able to feel was from the electronic suspension from mode to mode. I started off my sessions in the sport mode just to get a feel for this new track, the changing weather conditions. And as I got more comfortable, I could feel the front end diving under brakes or the rear end squatting under acceleration, and that the whole thing just, as my pace kind of picked up, I could feel where it was giving to provide a more comfortable ride, which probably is great on the canyon roads, up in the mountains, and so on. Once I switched into race mode and everything firmed up, my entry into the first corner comes at the end of a long straightaway, and getting on the brakes, it squats, but the whole thing feels way more balanced, way more firm, and there's a whole lot less initial dive on the braking as well, so it's much more supported and much more confidence inspiring to tip it into the corner. Same thing on corner exit. When you're getting off the corner, getting on the gas, there's a whole lot less squat, and it just feels more planted, more secure, and since it's not squatting so much, it's not trying to run you wide off the corner as well. I think balance here is the key phrase. Everything feels balanced, it feels easy to ride, but you also notice that this is no Panigale as well. It's certainly no hyper-motard. This is a big bike, it's a heavy bike, and there are sections of this racetrack where you're doing quick transitions from super tight left turn, super tight right turn, very quick transitions. Those are the points where you can feel the heft of the bike after lifting it up and then slowing it down a little bit and then slamming it back on the other side. That's the point where you can feel the heft that's all in the front of this bike. But you know, for what it is, it's just silly. I mean, come on. A Multistrada that can, in the hands of an expert rider, probably could enter a race and embarrass a lot of people, which is just a silly concept to think of, which is why I love this thing. I mean, bikes that are visually meant to do one thing, but can really do it all, especially haul ass on a racetrack, that just makes me laugh. I mean, come on, who doesn't like something that looks like this and could be top of the A group at your next track day? It's wild, right? but this is the kind of thing you can have now, and it's because a lot of you spoke up and said you wanted something like this, and so Ducati has delivered. That said, it's not going to be cheap. Final pricing hasn't been announced yet, but you can expect something in the high 30s US dollars, probably just under 40 is my guess. But you know, if you're looking at one of these, you know, you're young at heart, maybe your bones and your joints are kind of crackling like mine are these days, and you still want to go fast, but you don't want to commit to a totally aggressive riding style like this, and you still want to take your significant other on the back and load up the bags for a weekend trip, I don't think you're going to find a more capable motorcycle than this. All right, well, you've pretty much heard my brain download right in front of your eyes there. Super fun, super capable motorcycle. There is some heft in the front. You do feel the weight, and it's going to cost you a pretty penny to get one of these. But if you can afford it, and a little bit of everything is what you're looking for in a bike, the Multistrada V4 RS is super cool. And as a fun side note, the project leader on this is a woman who doesn't want to go on camera. But it's just super cool, in my opinion, that Ducati is putting more and more women in positions of power and of positions that mean a lot to the motorcycling community. So, thanks again for watching, everyone. You can go to Motorcycle.com and read my written review there. I'll have more pictures. I'll be able to explain more things in more detail in case I haven't already. There's a lot more to say and a lot more to tell there. And again, the photos are going to be pretty rad too. So with that all said, thanks for watching. Be sure to go to Motorcycle.com, read the full review there. And as I said at the top of this video, this is dedicated to Evans Brassfield. We miss you. We hope you're shining down on us and smiling. And with that note, thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave your comments. Tell me what you think of this bike. And ride safe, and we'll see you later.